Welcome, Nate.
Oh, dang. I'm spotlighted. Wow. Okay. I don't really know what that means. Cool. Thank you so much for having me, Manuel. This is cool. All right. I got to read poems. Cool. I'll start with this one. What do you need to know? Now, this is the very first poem in the book. I have to read it funny because it's landscape. So, yeah, I don't know. Landless acknowledgement. Before we get started, we would like to acknowledge that we live on some unceded bones. Sometimes me and mine imagine ancestral homes. All I got so far is Montgomery, Alabama. Maybe a boat, maybe a plot of land somewhere so far from the south sides I've claimed that I would get lost on the way. I admit, sometimes my homies talk about their families immigrating and I get jealous. We lost the land we were custodians over before I was a twinkle in the eye of a twinkle in the eye of a twinkle in the eye. Closest I got to a homeland is my mama's Caucasian pitch on the phone calling the police. Closest I got to a homeland is not never calling the police. Closest I got to a homeland is my daddy's laugh in a spades game. Closest I got to a homeland is my lover's tongue talking or otherwise. Closest I got to a homeland is the funk under a DJ's needle and my hand full of a dance partner. Not to be dark, but I am. Not to be dark, but the planet is on fire. Not to be dark, but they move in capitals because the water is coming up. Not to be dark, but our bones are in that water too. Maybe that's my capital. Once the polar capitals melt and there's a whole lot less land for folks to buy and sell and steal, maybe everybody will feel a little more dark, will feel a little more homelandless like we do. Why you think I call my compatriots homies? Maybe ain't no home, except for how your beloveds cuss or pray or pronounce. Cool. All right. Yeah, it's so like doing these. This is really cool. And it's like been a particular kind of bright spot, I think, in the, dystopia we all live in, to be able to like not only do Zoom readings, but also like, just be in the audience for them. But it's so weird because it's such a different energy than like an in-person reading where you like feel, like you can sort of feel people reacting in a way, and I miss that. So I don't know, I'm just thinking about that. This next piece, this is called Conceal. You can come in if you want. I'm doing a poetry reading, man. This is my nephew, Justin. Justin, say hello to the lighthouse. Cool. All right, cool. This is called Conceal, and it's from what do you need to know about it? I wrote it after listening to an interview some years ago with Tamir Rice's grandmother. For those of y'all who don't remember, Tamir Rice was a young man who was murdered by the police in Cleveland. He was like 12 or 13, and he, I think, had a toy gun. And this thing she said in an interview that really struck me was, was like he wasn't allowed to play with toy guns. And I thought about that because it was like, I had a similar rule when I was a kid, right? I wasn't allowed to play with toy guns. And I think that this is like perhaps a thing that is like common amongst a lot of Black folks that other people don't necessarily have to think about in the same ways. So yeah, this is called Conceal. Grandma, who kept books for a living and read corner store romance novels. Grandma, who kept dictionaries on the kitchen table and slurred words into contraction. Grandma, who taught me how to pass a poll test and how to beat a draft exam. Grandma, who told me to study hard and leave school if the MBA was an option. Grandma, who bought black and called us her little niggas with a smirk. Grandma, who taught me how to shoot a bank shot and told me to quit the team if I rode bench. Grandma, who paid for cars in cash and gambled herself broke on weekends. Grandma, who hid toy guns I got as gifts. And when she passed, I pulled a real shotgun from the wall of her closet. Cool. I'll read this. This is, I guess, this is like the first time a kid, like to my face, like called me like a racial slur. Uh, yeah. Poem for Blackie. Your name so given after you called me Blackie in Bart's basement, and I slid a hard cue ball into your surprised white finger. I ask about you more than I do any of the other neighborhood kids, the ones who were nice to me, or at least silent. I consider you more now than any of the girls down the block with their quick smiles and snapping necks, their fretful mothers peeking in the windows. My man Blackie. If we shook hands today, would your ring finger crook? Blackie, we ate kielbasa together and then beefed. Blackie, Blackie, Blackie. You, apology paid in pain, little reversal of racism, small justice of wrath, my middle school jubilee, my first tiny reparation. Cool. I'll do this one. Yeah, I guess I read a poem about my grandma, so I'll read a poem about my grandfather. Yeah, he's my last living grandparent. So. What can be said? Tonight, I'm feeling tender because it's another time with my granddaddy, and he's still here. And if he could remember, I would ask him about when he was young, what he would say to the women so they knew he meant whatever he wanted them to know he meant. But he's not here in that way, so I say, how you living, young man? And he answers, slow motion. And I believe him because I can see him tentative when he lifts himself out of the chair. Once Alzheimer's does what it do, you never really have conversations. It's more a man becomes a poem, a lot of repetition and love with something indecipherable in between. Cool. Oh, man. Huh. You know what? Yeah, I'll read that. Let's see. So my nephew Justin has been like staying with me for the summer, which has really been a joy, I think, for me and my partner. And we're flying back to Chicago tomorrow to take him home, and I'm a little sad. So I'm gonna read this poem that's in the book that is called A Poem for Justin. He's standing right here, so this is be good and embarrassing. So very good. A poem for Justin. Because you asked for one when I told you to stop jumping on me that night as I was writing. Because your favorite Jay-Z song is December 4th for his mother's voice and Jay's story about his life. Because I told you the first song you heard in your young life was I Used to Love Her in the hospital room with my big headphones over your soft head. Because you asked me your first word and I said I didn't know, and I could have told you a good lie and made that a small poem we shared. Because when you spend the night, you take my clothes and drape them over yourself like a prayer shawl. Because you clown me to my friends and impersonate me in a way that says, I see you, uncle. Because you ask me if I love all books, since I have so many, and I say only the ones that tell us who we are. Because I ask you what I should write about, and you say, write about us. Um, I read this one. This next one, it's called On, and I guess just like a little bit of information. Um, where I'm from Chicago, and like putting something on something is like the way that we sort of make a promise. So like you might say like, oh, I put that on my mama, like whatever, right? Um, as a way, it's like saying like I swear to God. So on. The highest promise we could offer was one to a land or man or idea greater than we. Someone would exclaim, on folk I made that shot, or on chief I got her number, or on boss I didn't see anything that night. When we put covenants on everything we loved, this suggested seriousness. We were not allowed to love in any fickle way. In the revisionist history of my hood genesis, I would be more honest than honest. Put things on my Huffy bike, on my report card, on my citizenship award, on my mama's golden NA necklace, on my grandma's favorite chair, on my father's attention and the warm air he left each time he fled. After Pierre got shot and his bullet gifter walked the same blocks as the rest of us in uneasy Omerta, I didn't think he died. How could he, when his name became a vow for us all? Each street dispute punctuated with on P to prove us tellers of truths. When Bird got jumped, his spinal column crushed, I assume he made his street name true. A different kind of flight. Everything sacred between ragtown boys, now enveloped in the parchment of On Bird and carried away. Cool. I guess I'll just read one more. This is really cool. I'm like a very big fan of Khadijah, so I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm in a group chat with a bunch of poets and like various other art makers, and yeah, there have been like days where we've just spent like a solid hour just like talking about how great Khadijah is and her work is. So I'm excited to be reading alongside her. All right, this is called 511, which is my favorite number. How much is owed to those who wore the chains, who tilled the land, who nursed the babes, who mixed the grits, who fried the food, who chopped the wood, who picked the bowls, who ran the road, who fought the war, who shared the crop, who made the name, who wore the noose, who blacked the codes, who sparked the schools, who juked the blues, who showed the soul, who left the South, who stayed the course, who caught the hell, who marched the march, who broke the strike, who struck the blow, who took the vote, who held the hood, who housed the club, who queered the notes, who spun the jams, who funked the flow, who built the thing, who built the thing, who built the thing. You know. Take the payment you ain't give for all that and press it down. Make it overflow. Fit 11 times and give me that in my own numbers of my own currency. Cool. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much, Nate. I'll cancel the spotlight so you can hide back into the Zoom. But I'm going to put the spotlight on Khadijah now. Sorry, Khadijah. And because I, embarrassed Nate with his bio, I am going to do the same to you because it's only fair and everything. So, Khadijah Queen, PhD, is the author of 5 books, most recently I'm So Fine, A List of Famous Men and What I Had On. Praised in O Magazine, The New Yorker, Rain Taxi, Los Angeles Review, and elsewhere as quietly devastating and a portrait of defiance that turns the male gaze inside out. Individual poems and prose appear in Poetry, Fence, Tin House, American Poetry Review, BuzzFeed, Gulf Coast, Poor Claudia, The Offing, Jubilette, Memoir, Tupelo Quarterly, Diagram, Lit Hub, New Delta Review, The Force of What's Possible, and widely elsewhere. Her 2019 op-ed on poetry and disability, co-edited with Jillian Weiss in the New York Times. She's an assistant professor of creative writing at University of Colorado Boulder and serves as core faculty for the Mile High MFA in creative writing at Regis University. Her 6th book, Anodyne, comes out this week from Tin House. Khadijah, we're just so happy to have you here.
I am so glad to be here with you and to read with Nate. I remember when he announced the title of that book, because finna is like my favorite word on the planet. So I was just so happy to see that there's a book with that title, and I knew it was going to slap. So I'm so, energized by the excellence of those poems. And I want to say something too about how much the poems that you read honor the knowledge of grandmothers and grandfathers. We've been talking about that in our workshop this week. The value and rigor and importance of other ways of knowing other than academic and scientific, that our elders have knowledge that is just as important, if not more so. And I love that you said some of it is like, I can't remember the words you use, but like, you can't translate it or understand all of it and be able to articulate it. You have to feel it. So thank you so much for blessing us with that reading. So I'm gonna read some grandma poems too. Anodyne is out on the 18th, although I think it is shipping early. I got my stack of books. So I just did a radio interview yesterday, and I don't think she read these poems because she thought they would be uplifting. So they're not really like, oh my God, not at all uplifting. So I'm just gonna read my sad poems, and I think maybe I'll close with something that's angry, because what are we living in right now? In the event of an apocalypse, be ready to die. But also remember galleries, gardens, herbaria, repositories of beauty now ruined to find exquisite. Untidy, untended loveliness of the forsaken, of dirt-studded and mold-streaked treasures that no longer belong to anyone alive. Overrunning and overflowingly unkempt monuments to the disappeared. Chronicle the heroes and mothers, artisans who went to the end of the line, protectors and cowards. Remember when pain was not to be seen or looked at, but institutionalized, invisible, unspoken, transformed, but not really transformed, covered up with made-up valor or resilience. Some people are not worth saving, no one wants to say, but they say it in judgment. They say it in looking away. They say it in staying safe in a lane created by someone afraid of losing ground, thinking, I doubt we're much to look at, as we swallow what has to hurt until we can sing sharp as blades. Aiming for the sensational as we settle for the ordinary, avoiding evidence of suffering at all costs, and reach clone-like into the ground as aspen roots, or slide feet first down a soft slope, wet, cold, but the faith to fall toward the unseen, the bleak of most memory. Call it elusive. Call it the fantasy to end all fantasies, awaiting fatality, blight of both education and habit. Warned inert, we could watch ourselves, foolish, lose it all. Erosion. 10 million years casts any movement as given. Grand Mesa prone to rock slide, but craters at Dotsero stay young. Once, lava flow took a mile of highway, stretched out its red heat and black smoke rising gray to white, no lake, crawling baby of magma and water. When snow-topped, both still boom with basalt, that molten underground we swim the surface of. In Palisade, the low range casts no shadow over the vines, peaks rising inward as separate entities, stark high earth and low height green. Road dust cradles the ground. I go there with a friend. A drink in the evening becomes two. Laughter, then a free confession overlooking lavender fields. Man-made, another desert verdanted, in which one person admits they're precious enough to hide. The night brings out hunters, intoning survival in that shadow, blink of life in swallow and vapor, body ever in revolt, a red centimeter of a mouth asking what else. How we fail is how we continue. So this one is my dad's mom, so my father's mother, my grandma on my daddy's side. I wrote that after the election in 2016, and here the hell we are right now. The Rule of Opulence. This is older. Fun fact about this poem is it was on the SATs, which are now obsolete. Hopefully we won't have to deal with SATs anymore, but it was an SAT question. The Rule of Opulence. Bamboo shoots on my grandmother's side path grow denser every year they're harvested for nuisance. Breezes peel blush and white petals from her magnolia, lacing unruly roots in the spring grass. For 9 decades, she has seen every season stretch out of shape, this past Connecticut winter slow to relinquish cold. As a girl, she herded slow turkeys on her Aunt Nettie's farm, 50 acres in a Maryland county that didn't plumb until mid-century, plucking chickens and pheasants from pre-dawn into the late night, scratching dough for neighbors, relatives stopping by for biscuits, and the view from my window changes. It's Mother's Day, and I'd always disbelieved permanence, newness a habit, change an addiction. But the difficulty of staying put lies not in the discipline of upkeep, as when my uncle chainsaws hurricane-felled birches blocking the downslope driveway, not in the inconvenience of well water, slowing showers and night flushes, not in yellow jackets colonizing the basement, nuzzling into a hole so small only a faint buzz announces their invasion when violin solos on vinyl end, but in the opulence of acres surrounding a tough house. Twice repaired from fires, a kitchen drawer that hasn't opened properly in 30 years marked danger. Nothing more permanent than the cracked flagstone path to the door, that uneven earth shifting. Fun fact about that drawer, my grandmother had some contractors out to try to fix it like in the 70s, and they were racist and rude to her, so she kicked them out and she just never fixed the drawer. Antediluvian. Where were you when the truth disappeared, or when the truth battered us, and we pretended fear fell from the ripped pillow of our sky instead of rising up from the one clear place of us? Where were you when strong men told us to die and blasted us into nothing? Were you downtown to witness the smooth mirage stagnate in skyscraper shade and neon glower? Did you hop a bus and clutch a cold center rail, the sweat of your palm making you slip as if at sea? Were you at sea in memory gathered into lyric, your body pretending any era was a safe one? 6 persimmons ripen unconsumed. Mayfly wings flash their iridescence in the dark. Nothing works. By swallowing alarm, you scrapped what you knew near plaza fountains, ultra anonymous. Now, an arrowhead sharpens the blood under our flesh. Low to the ground, a sea of tamarisks. You claim millennia led to the false obelisks, led to what severs the head of connection in the time of least, but we only ask that you not kill us. So what time is it? I think I'll just read one last longer poem. And the grandma in this poem is my mom's mama, who I was very close to. Double life. Last night I split a bottle plus a glass of white, a clear Cali Sauv that first woke me, then put me to sleep. In between bites of poblano soup and spicy slaw on bootleg street tacos, we ran off each random white man who thought he could eat in our silence with our crass laughter and endless sentences about oppression in work life and bloodstreams, ours and others. And who did they think could escape now? Collision of fear and brazenness clapping together in historical play across the moving planet. Erica says, a woman named Chocoletta saved her from boss-led persecution, and I say or think something like, her mother had vision, and the power in a Black woman's name saves us all. Hungover and overworked this morning, I get my tax bill. Doubled my income last year, so double too. I wish I could pull a Thoreau, but I'm only 41.8% white. If only I could just be chased off a bar stool at the Hornet on Broadway after eating a plate of fake nachos and drinking a warm Pilsner. Instead, I fear the end of a chase ending in blood, mine or someone's I love, and I love us all, and so many of my white friends know how to help ease my way out of wreck. I show up at the university in bold new professor leather and tweed, elbow patched and afraid I'll learn to pontificate too much by default, or tell too much truth, or be much too Black to be trusted. I notice one of my white male students leaves the room every time we talk about race. My therapist tells me I should put things like that in the container I made up for what I can't control, and I do. This job isn't writing at all, and I'm burning too fast, afraid to combust, and afraid I won't. For dessert, we split peach cobbler topped with vanilla ice cream. I don't eat dairy, so she spooned it up, and I basked in the warm sugar and fruit and surprise of caramel crisscrossed on the just right crust, remembering my grandmother and the smell of nutmeg and cinnamon in her kitchen, fresh peaches simmering in syrup in an old pot on the gas stove, her fingers pinching quick dough, remembering her permanent frown as a pair of mirrored crescents between her eyes, the map of lines on her forehead. And as we speak, I am inheriting the furrows earned rightly by crones. If you do it quickly, Grandma said you can heal burns without leaving a scar. Smooth your injured skin, then peel and cut a potato in two and hold each rinsed half to the heated flay until the potato turns black. Repeat until it looks like nothing ever happened. Uncle Sugar Pie raised her and her sisters in Michigan because white men lynched her father in Alabama and threatened her uncle with death if he didn't leave too. They took my great-grandfather's store and land and home, and Uncle Sugar Pie was a nice man, but rocked on his front porch chair with a shotgun if he saw any white men walking the neighborhood trying to sell any damn thing. What else can we do for protection? I think about that in the ecstasy of a sweet peach and the irony of death and theft on indigenous land and the violence of language in every space I enter, and I think I am losing everything but my mind. I certainly am paying for the trouble, and we split all that liquor, so now our whispers need to get loud. Yes, now you have to listen or move the hell out of the way. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much, Khadijah. That was wonderful. I want to open it up to the audience for any questions. And then, actually, I always take the first question, give folks a chance to think things through. But I'm really curious about, for both Nate and Khadijah, the two of you write across multiple forms. And I'm always curious to see like how an artist decides what is going to end up as what, whether it's a poem, whether it's a piece of like flash prose or play, whatever. So maybe you can share that with us, how you determine, or even just how your projects kind of take shape.
That's a good question because I play with containers a lot. Like, what's the right container for a certain piece of writing? And I think I just kind of try stuff out. I know a lot of people like want some formulas for it, but I'm the worst at that because I just like to try everything. I'm an art school dropout. I make a mess. I move things around. I just try to figure it out. But sometimes I think I will try received form if I feel that I don't know how to approach delivering that content. And usually that will come as some kind of prose. So the Zuhitsu that I wrote in May when my sister was sick, that was because I had a lot to say and I didn't know how to say it. And I was teaching the Zuhitsu and I was like, I'm just gonna try it because it's so everything. It's like, it's everything and anything. So yeah, that's probably not at all helpful, Nate.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I guess. I mean, I sort of feel like I'm writing in terms of like a subject. I think the subjects are sort of always the same, or the concerns the same. But the difference for me in writing across genre is like what, like if everything was if everything is sort of like listening to music or something, I'm like playing with the EQ and with all the different knobs for each thing, right? And so for me, like the difference between writing a poem versus writing a rap is that in a rap, like the sort of sonic meaning and how it has to work on a sonic level is turned up in a different kind of way. And then maybe certain kinds of like sort of lyric meaning or like word meaning would be turned up more in the poem, right? And maybe like the kind of impulse towards narrative that is not only like feels like true and plausible, but also delightful in its way. It's sort of turned up if it's like drama or if it's a kind of narrative form, that kind of thing. But I guess that's like, yeah, I sort of just think all the stuff is the same thing, just like, slightly freaked.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Nate. I have a question here from, let's see. Oh, yes. So how are you hoping readers will integrate your work into the conversation about Black joy and about place? And that's for both of you.
First of all, hi, Faye Lita Higgs. I just taught your poem this morning. I think, I've gotten this question before. And I think that because we talk about trauma a lot, folks might think that there's not any joy in it. But I really, really feel that our joy is insistent. And I feel that it is like one of the most powerful things that we have because it exists alongside that trauma. So like we find joy in any and everything, like just like the way we talk, right? I was just talking about how finna is like my favorite word. There is joy in that. There is joy in that peach cobbler, right? There's joy in remembering how my grandmother pinched the dough and how she gave me that just casually that remedy for a burn that won't leave a scar on your skin. So I think our joy is expansive and insistent. And what about place? I mean, that's a difficult thing because our history is one of displacement, right? That's like a whole long lecture conversation. And I feel like I'm talking a lot. So I think I'm going to let Nate answer that question. And maybe I'll come back to it.
Word. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I resonate a lot with the joy answer, but I guess in terms of place, certainly I think people like my work, the first book was very much like a Chicago book and sort of a kind of a coming of age thing that, feels very deeply rooted in a place. And I think this book is, in some ways it's still like a very Chicago book because even a book about like language and about Black language is going to be this thing that is regional by definition, right? Like, Denver has, slightly different slang than Chicago has slightly different slang than Memphis has slightly different slang than, like a small town in Mississippi, right? Whatever, right? Even if they all share a kind of root or share a relationship, right? Even if there is a sort of lingua franca between them all. And so, yeah, I guess like for me, place has always been, quite literally a sort of grounding thing, wherever it is, right? So, like being from Chicago, I feel sort of in a lineage with Chicago writers like Gwendolyn Brooks and like Margaret Burroughs and, Sandberg and Frank Marshall Davis and so on and so forth. But, but even like when I lived in, when I went to Tennessee for school, right, having to reckon with that place and reckon with myself in that place, right? I think, a thing I think that like, in particular, like Black folks wrestle with, but I think we all wrestle with in our way is like how our bodies live and move in different places, in different kinds of places. And so that's the thing I'm always thinking about. And then, in some ways for me, like it becomes, it's like necessary to dislocate oneself in order to write thoughtfully about a particular place. So what I mean when I say that is like, for instance, like, it's hard for me to write about Chicago when I'm like in Chicago and living in Chicago and sort of like doing that. So like the vast majority of poems I ever write about Chicago, I wrote when I was like out of town, either to live, like I was gone living somewhere else, or I like took a trip or something. Cause it's just like, you just need a little bit of distance for perspective, right? And there are ways you can do that internally, right? But yeah, I feel like deeply shaped by place. Like there's Colorado poems in the book because this is like the place I'm at. Like, yeah.
I think for me it's a little different because my family moved around a lot, so we never like got really used to being in one place. There's like my parents are divorced. They tried to get back together once, and me and my sister was like, please, we can't have both of you in the same place. Please don't get back together. So we're just kind of back and forth between them. And we don't have my mom's house no more, that kind of stuff. So and then living in LA, if you've read I'm So Fine, like just trying to walk down the street was a whole like ridiculous exercise in staying safe from dudes. So I don't feel as attached to a place. I think, also I'm a Gemini, so maybe I live in the air. I don't know. I feel that I'm much more interested in place in a theoretical way, like, and also traveling. I have some travel essays and I would love to write more when we don't have a coronavirus rampaging across the globe. So I do find joy in that, in the travel and the unpacking of what place means to a body moving through it. So maybe that's my relationship to place, just that observational approach.
Thank you both for those thoughtful answers. And Nate put, imagine just traveling to a place just because, right?
Imagine that.
Yeah. Let's see. Do we have any other questions? And you can unmute yourself. You don't have to drop it in the chat too. Oh, here's one from Carol Burkett. As your publication dates come closer, how does your relationship to the work in the book change?
I just sort of let it go. I think, like for me, part of the experience of like putting art into the world is understanding that like now I've like sort of signed over. I mean, in some ways, like literally signed over the rights to things, but in a more practical sense, like signed over the right for my interpretation of the piece to be the predominant one or to be the most important one. And so, I kind of appreciate that process because there's something about it that feels very humbling to me to understand that like words that I might have like worked on and originated in some way, like ultimately aren't going to live with me. They're going to live with the reader. If the book is sort of lucky enough to find its readers. So I think that's the thing. And then for me, a lot of it is also just like trying to find different ways to like keep myself excited or interested or engaged in the work, right? So, that whether that's like switching up what poems I read from event to event or switching up the order in which they are, but like I'm often, if I'm sort of like touring a project, so where I'm reading a lot from that thing, then I'm trying to think about, okay, what can I do to like keep it sort of exciting for me. So like, even if you have like, even if it's like your first time engaging with it, I still have the same sort of excitement that I'm able to like carry into the reading. So I know like in the past I've done, like I might do like a week of readings or whatever, and I'll think of that whole reading or that whole week as like a single reading. And so I don't repeat things over that week or stuff like that, just to like, almost like to kind of give myself a form to like keep it interesting.
Yeah, all of that. And sometimes I'm like in the mood to mess with people because some of my poems are like really weird and or fragmented or require some more intellectual engagement than others. Some are like crowd pleasers. So I kind of like gauge the audience sometimes for their adventurousness, and I might tailor the reading that way. If I feel like for undergrads, especially those who have read a particular book, then I try to read what they would like to hear. So it depends on the audience and depends on the mood I'm in. Sometimes, sometimes I think this is my 6th book. So I remember the first book, and which was a lot stranger than all the rest of them. And I read to this group of sorority sisters who were in their 70s and 80s. And they're like all in purple with like purple hats. And I'm reading Conduit, which is like these sort of abstract, some of them are ekphrastic pieces. And I was like, they ain't gonna like my poems. But so many of them bought the book and they were like, I appreciate how your mind works. And I just, for that to be my first experience, reading my book was very vital to me. And I think considering the audience when I'm reading is something that I like to do. And that's fun for me, like trying to be psychic a little bit.
This is Carlene. I'm just going to say that Black women that you read to are like the best. They will buy your book. They will support you. That you could have been speaking another language and they would be like, I'm going to buy this baby's book. I'm going to tell other people to buy this baby's book, and that's yeah. Always just like, you are going to get a warm welcome.
It was so wonderful, I have to say. Yeah. And for them to ask me questions to explain it and then understand what I was saying without being dismissive.
Yeah.
was also wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you all for that. This question, so Nate, I know your nephew's like hiding behind you right there, and I thought it'd be good just to ask him what it's been like spending the summer with you.
Yeah, he walked away. This fool's like,
Oh,
so that's what it's been like. He'll like come in the room and like interact with me or like let me tell you something funny, and then it's not funny at all. It's just like a random thing about his life, and then he's like, "Okay, cool, bye," and he like goes and or something. But it's been interesting. I made him. He did a summer camp in Chicago on the computer, so he like wrote a bunch of poems in that, and we like. I like tried to get him to freestyle a little bit, which was very funny because he was just like, "Oh, Uncle Nate, this is so hard." Yeah, but it's we've been like watching documentaries and playing Uno and like going on walks and stuff. So it's been cool.
that's cool. I appreciate that. And just for both of you, as we close up tonight, is there anything that you want to? Is there anything you're reading, you're listening to, you're watching, anything that's just like inspiring you right now that you want to talk about and share with our audience?
I'm listening a lot to Jazz Karis. I guess you would call it neo soul or something. I'm really bad at categories. An English British artist. She's great. And what am I reading? I'm reading student papers. I have like 50 papers to grade. That's what I'm reading. I have a list. I have a list of things to read. I just finished teaching Toni Morrison. A Mercy. I recommend everybody read A Mercy. Some of the folks here read that along with Sula. So I'm still letting that settle or resettle into my mind.
What am I? So I've been listening to Adia Victoria, who is this like singer-songwriter and also a poet as well. Yeah, and her last album is really, really fantastic. Side note, which I didn't know but learned the other day, she the Taylor Swift album that just came out, Folklore, like I think all the musicians and like the people that worked on it are the exact same people that did Adia's last record like a year ago. So that's sort of like random and cool. If you like Taylor Swift, then I don't know, like an algorithm would probably ping you now. So yeah, that's a thing. And then, man, what am I mean, I have like very big stacks of books that I'm always like picking through. But I think probably the thing I've been like reading the most recently is The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, which I read like years ago, but I'm like sort of rereading with a friend. And a thing about me, my grandma was a librarian, and she was very she was just like, she like thought of books as kind of holy things, and I think I inherited that. And so I never write in books. Like if I need to take notes, I like have a notebook because it like freaks me out. But like I've been actually like writing in this and like underlining things, and it's a different experience. It's like a different experience to actually like touch the book in this way.
Well, thank you, Nate, Khadijah. Thank you both so much. We really appreciate you reading tonight, especially reading from your new works. I have pre-ordered both of them, and someday when the post office gets them to my house, like early September-ish, God willing, I'll be able to read all of those. But thank you both so much for coming and sharing with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Manuel. Such a pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you, Khadijah. Thank you, Manuel.
Good night, y'all.
Oh.
Good night. We'll see you soon. Take care.